Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Tonight, we're not embarking on a grand, sweeping adventure, nor are we witnessing a major, pivotal historical turning point. Instead, we're doing something altogether different, something profoundly quiet, something that whispers of solitude, of steadfastness, and of an unwavering, silent dedication. We're stepping slowly, gently into the quiet, often overlooked world of the lighthouse keeper. Imagine, if you will, a life lived right there, on the very edge of the known world, a life perpetually surrounded by the endless rhythmic murmuring of the ocean and the equally rhythmic, profoundly comforting pulse of a guiding light cutting through the vast darkness. This, tonight, is a story not of grand battles or dramatic heroic rescues, but rather of routine, of deep, pervasive solitude, and of the quiet, enduring dignity that came with a job that for centuries often went entirely unnoticed. That is, until it was desperately, critically, fundamentally needed. So, as you settle in, dim the lights around you, perhaps turn on a gentle fan for that soft, almost imperceptible background hum. Find a truly comfortable spot where your body can completely relax, and just allow the gentle, steady cadence of my voice, along with the distant, hypnotic murmur of waves, to slowly, softly carry you, effortlessly, into the silent, enduring world of lighthouses. Let your mind drift, just as the slow sweeping arc of the lighthouse beam drifts across the water. Allow yourself to be drawn into this quiet, timeless space. Before we fully meet our keeper, before we fully immerse ourselves into their meticulous, unchanging day, let's take a moment, a slow, deliberate, deep breath, to truly, deeply understand why these magnificent stone towers, these defiant structures rising so majestically from jagged, wave-battered cliffs and isolated remote islets, became so absolutely vital, so fundamentally indispensable. For centuries, the vast, shimmering, often terrifying sea was both a majestic, boundless highway for commerce and exploration, and, far too often, a merciless, hungry graveyard for those who dared to cross its unpredictable expanse. Ships, those seemingly fragile wooden vessels laden with precious cargo, with the hopes and dreams of distant lands, and with countless human lives navigated by the distant arc of the sun, the faint, shimmering glow of the stars on clear nights, and, more often than we might care to admit, by sheer, desperate, improbable luck alone. But when great, unforeseen storms unexpectedly raged, unleashing their fury upon the open water, or when the insidious, creeping tendrils of a thick, silent fog rolled in from the deep, vast ocean like a hungry, ethereal ghost, those coastlines, those seemingly safe landmasses transformed instantly into deadly, unforgiving traps. Hidden reefs lying in wait like hungry, jagged teeth, treacherous, razor-sharp rocks lurking just beneath the deceptive calm of the surface, and shallow, shifting sandbanks could tear a sturdy vessel apart in mere minutes, often consigning its entire crew and precious cargo to the cold, dark, silent depths below, lost forever. Lighthouses, then, were not just built. They were born of profound necessity, a desperate, silent plea for order, for clarity, for a touch of predictability in a chaotic, unpredictable, and often merciless world. They were, in every sense, beacons of hope, rising defiantly against the wild, untamed nature of the sea, promising a glimmer of safe passage, guiding weary mariners away from unseen dangers, away from the lurking shadows, and, ever so slowly, ever so steadily, towards the longed-for comforting embrace of a safe, welcoming harbour. Each light, each singular tower possessed its own unique, carefully choreographed rhythm, a distinct flash, then a measured, precise period of darkness, then another precise, unmistakable flash, a secret, silent language spoken in light and shadow, understood instinctively, without a single spoken word, by sailors the world over, regardless of their nationality, their language, or their experience. It was, quite simply, a language of survival, of life and death, communicated through the endless night. These structures were not merely inert constructs of cold stone, rough brick, and unforgiving iron. They were, in essence, sentinels, living, breathing guardians, standing an eternal, unwavering watch through the longest, darkest nights and the fiercest, most unyielding gales. They were the sleepless eyes of the coast, and behind every steady, comforting beam, behind every pulse of light cutting through the gloom, there was always, always a human being, a keeper, a silent, dedicated soul whose entire life was defined by the profound isolation of their post and the endless, relentless cycle of routine, utterly devoted, completely committed to keeping that precious light alive hour after hour, night after night. Their stories are not the dramatic narratives of grand battles fought on distant lands or heroic last-minute rescues in raging seas, but rather the quiet chronicles of unseen endurance, of endless meticulous polishing, of the subtle, precise adjustments made in the dead of night, and of the profound, weighty, almost spiritual responsibility that came with holding, quite literally, a small, fragile, yet immensely powerful piece of the night sky in their own two often calloused hands. It was a life of quiet, unwavering purpose, lived day after day, night after night, in profound solitude. Imagine, if you will, waking slowly, gently, before the sun has even thought about making its appearance, long before the first faint hint of colour begins to stain the eastern sky. You don't wake to the jarring, intrusive clamour of an alarm clock, but to the deep, resonant, rhythmic sigh of the ocean, a sound that, over time, has become as intimately familiar as your own steady heartbeat. Perhaps the distant, mournful cry of a single gull drifts in on the cool, damp morning air, a lonely, ethereal companion in the vast stillness. You stretch slowly, deliberately, feeling the deep, pervasive chill of the ancient stone walls around you, a persistent, damp cold that seems to seep into your very bones, no matter the season. No matter how many layers of wool you might wear. There's no bustling city outside your window, no distant rumble of traffic, no sounds of awakening neighbours stirring, no footsteps on the street below, just you, the solid, unyielding presence of the lighthouse, rising around you, and the vast, indifferent, endlessly murmuring sea stretching out into the gloom. Your very first task of the day, even before a thought of breakfast, even before the day has truly begun for the rest of the world, is to attend to the lamp itself. Throughout the long, dark, silent hours of the night, it's been working tirelessly, ceaselessly, a burning, unwavering eye piercing the inky blackness, a constant guide. Now, as the first almost imperceptible hints of dawn begin to paint the eastern sky with soft, pale greys and muted blues, it's time, carefully, deliberately, to extinguish it. You begin your slow, deliberate ascent up the seemingly endless spiral stairs, your heavy, worn boots making a soft rhythmic echo on the smooth, worn, familiar steps. 100 steps. Perhaps 200, each one a tangible, physical connection to all the countless keepers who walked this very path before you, each one a familiar, comforting friend in the silent ascent. You pass small, narrow, often salt-sprayed windows that offer fleeting, ephemeral glimpses of the waking world outside. A vast, pewter-grey ocean stretching out to meet a pale, awakening sky, still holding onto the last, lingering vestiges of the night's deep slumber. At the very top, in the lantern room, the air is still pleasantly warm, heavy with the residual heat radiating from the lamp's tireless burning throughout the long night. The great lens, that magnificent, intricate assembly of polished glass prisms, stands silent, momentarily at rest, momentarily asleep after its long, faithful vigil. You approach the lamp with a careful, almost reverent touch, aware of its power and its purpose. You carefully, precisely trim the wick, removing any charred remnants, or if it's an older, more traditional oil lamp, you meticulously replenish the whale oil or colza oil, pouring it from a heavy, cool container with steady, practiced hands. The distinct, almost forgotten smell of warm lamp oil, of warm working metal, and of the bracing, salty sea air permeates the entire space. A unique signature aroma, the very essence of a lighthouse, a smell that clings to your clothes and hands. You then painstakingly wipe away every tiny trace of soot that might have accumulated, gently, meticulously check for the tiniest cracks or almost invisible imperfections in the glass panels, and ensure that every single surface is meticulously, spotlessly, impeccably clean. A single smudge, the smallest particle of dust, a tiny, almost imperceptible flaw on that magnificent complex lens could potentially diminish the strength, the reach, the clarity of the light, that one precious beam that, deep in your heart, saves lives out on the treacherous waters. This entire process is a quiet, almost meditative ritual, performed in a profound, enveloping silence, save for the gentle, insistent whisper of the wind just outside the thick, protective glass, and the subtle, rhythmic creak of the ancient tower as it subtly settles around you in the new day. There's a deep, profound sense of unseen purpose in this pervasive solitude. No one is watching your meticulous work. No one is applauding your unwavering dedication, but you know deep in your bones with an almost spiritual certainty that this work, this meticulous care, this unwavering attention to detail is absolutely, fundamentally essential. As the sun finally truly breaks the horizon, casting long, shifting golden shadows across the restless water, painting the sky with colours, the great powerful lamp goes dark, its night shift finally, truly over. For a few precious, hard-earned hours, the keeper can, at last, rest, knowing with quiet, deep satisfaction that the sun has now taken over their crucial watch, the natural, overwhelming light of day replacing the artificial guiding beacon of the night. A quiet moment of rest, earned by silent vigil. With the lamp now carefully extinguished and resting, its nightly duty complete, the keeper's day is, in truth, far from over. In fact, it's only just truly beginning. The real enduring work of a lighthouse keeper was less about dramatic, storm-tossed rescues, less about heroic last-minute saves, and more about a relentless, often monotonous, utterly predictable schedule of unyielding maintenance. This towering structure, this stoic, defiant guardian, constantly exposed to the brutal, unyielding forces of wind, of salt, and of sea spray, was, in essence, a living, breathing entity, perpetually engaged in a quiet, desperate daily battle against the insidious, relentless creep of decay. The very first and perhaps most time-consuming task after the lamp is put to bed for its daylight slumber is the exhaustive, painstaking process of cleaning. And this, let me assure you, is not just a quick, cursory wipe down, a momentary brush with a cloth. Oh no. Every single surface within the lantern room, every single perfect pane of glass, every single polished piece of brass, every gleaming lens element must gleam with an almost surgical, absolute cleanliness. The intricate brass mechanisms that facilitate the smooth, silent rotation of the massive, heavy lens, the highly polished glass panels that guide and focus the light, the sturdy metal railings that protect you from the biting wind on the gallery. Every single tiny part is perpetually susceptible to the corrosive, insidious touch of salt spray, to the accumulating dust, and to the constant penetrating dampness of the marine environment. You would spend what felt like endless methodical hours with soft, clean cloths, with specialized polishing compounds, and with a deep, almost meditative, unwavering focus. The lenses, those magnificent, precisely engineered lenses, demanded absolute, unyielding, painstaking perfection. Each individual prism, each segment painstakingly crafted to refract and magnify the light with pinpoint accuracy, needed to be utterly spotless, completely free of any trace of salt spray, any imperceptible speck of dust, any lingering fingerprint, any single blemish, so that the precious light, when ignited again at dusk, could cut through the darkest, most treacherous night with unwavering clarity, with absolute piercing precision, and reach its distant vital destination, guiding ships safely home. Imagine the cool, smooth, almost silky feel of the glass beneath your hands, the repetitive, soothing motion of wiping away the night's residual grime, slowly, methodically, tirelessly, revealing its pristine, flawless, almost invisible surface. Then there's the crucial, often repetitive yet essential task of winding. Many of the early lighthouses before the ubiquitous age of electricity relied entirely on massive, heavy weights and intricate, complex clockwork mechanisms to slowly, steadily rotate the immense, multifaceted lens. It was a true marvel of mechanical engineering, a testament to human ingenuity and precision, but it required constant, diligent, and often strenuous attention. Every few hours, sometimes more frequently depending on the specific mechanism and the speed of the rotation, the keeper would have to manually wind the mechanism, a laborious, physically demanding process akin to winding a giant, cumbersome grandfather clock, but on an industrial, much larger scale. The gentle, almost soothing, rhythmic sound of the gears slowly turning, meshing with quiet precision, the low, steady creak of the thick chains as they ascended, slowly pulling the weights back to their starting position, the heavy, deliberate thud of the weights slowly dropping, inch by quiet inch. These were the internal, living, mechanical rhythms of the lighthouse, a constant, reassuring internal hum that served as a perpetual reminder of its tireless, essential work, even when the lamp was dark during the daylight hours. It was a mechanical heartbeat, steady and true. Beyond the immediate, pristine confines of the lantern room, the entire tower itself demanded constant, vigilant, hands-on care. The sturdy masonry, constantly battered by wind and sea, could over time develop subtle hairline cracks. The wooden elements, exposed to relentless moisture, could, with unwavering exposure, slowly begin to rot from within, and the iron railings, constantly exposed to the biting, corrosive sea air, would inevitably begin to rust slowly, relentlessly. The keeper, in essence, often had to become a jack of all trades, a self-sufficient master of many forgotten crafts, a diligent painter, meticulously applying protective coats, a skilled carpenter, patching and repairing where needed, a rudimentary blacksmith, forging and mending small iron parts, all rolled into one indispensable, isolated individual. They would painstakingly patch crumbling mortar, carefully replace splintered wooden planks with newly cut ones, and apply thick, protective coats of paint to shield the vulnerable metalwork from the relentless, biting, corrosive sea air. It was a never-ending, quiet, physical battle against the unyielding, overwhelming forces of the elements, a profound, almost personal defiance in the face of nature's immense, uncaring and often brutal power. Every repair was a small victory against decay. And then there were the vital, logistical supplies to manage, heavy, cumbersome barrels of lamp oil, bundles of wicks, various specialized tools for repairs, and all the necessary provisions for daily living, for food and comfort. Everything, and I mean everything, had to be meticulously hauled up the winding, seemingly endless spiral stairs, often entirely by hand with aching muscles, sometimes with the aid of a creaking ancient winch if the lighthouse was equipped with one. A supply boat might only arrive once a month if you were lucky, sometimes even less frequently if persistent storms or rough seas interfered. So meticulous inventory management, careful, precise rationing, and thoughtful foresight were absolutely crucial for survival, for continuing the vigil. This wasn't simply a job, it was a self-contained world, a tiny, isolated universe, a small, self-sufficient kingdom dependent entirely on the keeper's unwavering diligence, their meticulous planning, and their profound foresight. The quiet, repetitive rhythm of these essential tasks, the steady, practiced hands, the focused, almost meditative gaze, all of it, every single movement, every single act, every single thought, contributed directly, undeniably, to the unwavering, comforting beam that sailors relied upon, minute after minute, hour after hour, throughout the endless, unpredictable night. Life in a lighthouse, for all its grand, vital purpose, wasn't merely about the incessant maintenance of the light. It was about establishing a deeply ingrained, almost ritualistic rhythm in a place where time itself often felt strangely suspended, slowed, almost irrelevant to the world outside. Meals were simple, often stark, and almost always solitary affairs, prepared and consumed over a small, sputtering, often temperamental stove. A perpetually warm pot of strong black coffee, perhaps some hardtack biscuits so tough they could indeed chip a tooth, and a portion of salted, preserved meat or cured fish, enough to sustain the body for the arduous tasks ahead. The relentless, constant sounds of the sea would be your eternal, ever-present companion. The soft, hypnotic, rhythmic rush of waves against the very base of the tower, the distant, echoing cries of gulls wheeling in lazy circles high overhead, and the mournful, resonant, deep moan of a foghorn on a particularly hazy, thick, shroud-like day. These pervasive sounds became the very fabric of your existence, woven into every silent moment. Keeping a detailed, precise weather log was another absolutely critical, non-negotiable duty. A silent conversation with the vast, indifferent sky and the ever-changing sea. Every few hours, regardless of the time of day or night, regardless of the prevailing weather, the keeper would step out onto the narrow, often windswept gallery, the precarious walkway encircling the lantern room, to observe the sea and sky with an almost obsessive, meticulous focus. They would meticulously record wind direction and speed, the exact air temperature, the precise degree of cloud cover, the vital visibility range, and most importantly, the current sea conditions, whether calm, choppy, or violently rough. This wasn't just a mere formality, a bureaucratic requirement, a simple entry in a book. These detailed, accurate observations were absolutely crucial for passing ships, for understanding the unpredictable, often violently sudden nature of the local climate, and for issuing critical warnings if needed. Imagine the keeper standing there, perhaps bundled in a heavy, scratchy oilskin coat, feeling the biting, cold spray on their face, watching the shifting, mercurial moods of the vast ocean, noting every subtle change in the light, every slight tremor in the air, every darkening cloud on the distant horizon. The world outside might be roaring with wind and waves, a symphony of natural chaos, but inside the tower there was only the quiet, deliberate scratch of a pen on paper, a tiny, determined act of order in a world of immense, indifferent chaos. A small, solitary act of control. For many keepers, particularly those stationed on the most isolated offshore lighthouses built on wave-battered remote outcrops or on tiny distant islands miles from any comforting shore, the only physical, tangible contact with the outside world came from the eagerly awaited, utterly vital supply boat. This was often a once-a-month event, a brief, precious and utterly vital connection to humanity, a fleeting glimpse of another life. The sight of the boat slowly approaching, a tiny bobbing speck on the vast, shimmering horizon, would bring a profound surge of anticipation and quiet, almost childlike excitement. It meant fresh provisions, desperately needed lamp oil, vitally important mail from loved ones, perhaps even a brief, longed-for conversation with another human being, a real voice. These interactions, though often fleeting and hurried, were absolutely vital for maintaining morale, for staving off the creeping loneliness, and for preserving a semblance of connection to the greater world. They brought news from the distant mainland, letters filled with stories of distant lives, and a temporary, sweet reprieve from the profound, pervasive, and often overwhelming isolation. Some keepers, particularly in less remote lighthouses or those connected to the mainland by a long, arduous path, lived with their families, transforming the stark, circular rooms of the lighthouse into a genuine, if unusual, home. Children would grow up with the rhythmic, comforting flash of the lamp as their nightly lullaby, a constant soothing pulse in the dark, and the vast, untamed ocean as their boundless, ever-changing backyard. But even with the comforting presence of family, the inherent sense of isolation was ever present, a silent, unyielding guest in their lives. Schooling would typically be at home, friends would be few or non-existent, and the very rhythm of life would be dictated entirely by the relentless cycle of the sea and the light, by the tides and the sun. In the rare, stolen, quiet moments earned through diligent work, a keeper might immerse themselves in a well-worn book, Perhaps a tattered novel whose pages were soft from countless readings, or a newspaper brought by the supply boat, often weeks or even months out of date, yet still devoured for any scrap of news. They might spend hours writing long, detailed letters to loved ones, pouring their thoughts and feelings onto paper, or simply sit by a window staring out at the unending, unchanging expanse of water, lost in profound thought, a small, solitary figure against the vastness of nature. The sea, in its immense, powerful indifference, teaches patience, teaches profound solitude, and teaches a deep, almost spiritual appreciation for the steady, unyielding pulse of time, for the cyclical nature of existence. It was a life defined by routine, yes, but also a life rich in quiet observation, in self-reflection, a constant, silent communion with nature's grand, indifferent, and often brutal beauty. A life of quiet purpose, day after day, night after night, the lamp and the keeper in an eternal, unwavering, rhythmic dance. The quiet life, the steady hum of existence. When one pictures a lighthouse, the mind often conjures vivid images of raging storms, of colossal waves crashing against defiant stone, of spray flying high into the night. And rightly so. These were indeed the fiercest, most dramatic battles. But perhaps even more insidious, more unnerving, more maddening than the fierce wind and the crashing waves was the silent, creeping enemy. The fog. Fog, that soft, silent blanket, could render the most powerful, far-reaching light utterly useless, turning its magnificent beam into nothing more than a faint, localized glow. It didn't announce itself with a roar, with a violent crash. It crept in stealthily, slowly, inexorably, muffling all sounds, swallowing entire horizons, transforming the familiar world into an impenetrable, disorienting white void, a thick, cold, cotton-like shroud that robbed you of all perspective. When the fog rolled in, slowly, inexorably, relentlessly, the lighthouse's other, deeper, more primal voice would slowly, suddenly come alive. The foghorn. These were often monstrous, powerful machines, often powered by steam or compressed air, meticulously designed to emit a sound so incredibly loud, so deep, so resonant, that it could, supposedly, penetrate the thickest, most opaque mist, cutting through the silence. The keeper's crucial job then shifted entirely, fundamentally, to ensuring that the foghorn operated continuously, tirelessly, relentlessly. This meant meticulously stoking hot boilers, maintaining complex engines with unwavering attention, and listening with every fibre of their being for the familiar, reassuring yet often maddening groan, the deep blast every few seconds, sometimes every minute, ensuring its consistent rhythm. Imagine the deafening, bone-shaking blast, repeating tirelessly, hour after hour, sometimes for days, even weeks on end, without reprieve, without a single moment of silence. It was a relentless, pervasive, almost sanity-testing sound, meant to warn, to guide, to cut through the oppressive, silent, overwhelming embrace of the fog. The keeper, often feeling deafened by the constant, overwhelming sound, would often feel the very vibration of the horn in their bones, a constant physical reminder of their unyielding, vital task, a deep, pervasive hum that became part of their very being. Then, of course, came the storms. Not the romanticized, cinematic kind depicted in paintings or adventure novels, but the raw, brutal, indiscriminate force of nature unleashed in its most terrifying, unyielding form. Waves, often described by those few who witnessed them firsthand as mountainous in their scale, would crash with unimaginable, devastating force against the very base of the tower, sending blinding, icy spray hundreds of feet into the churning, violent air, sometimes, unbelievably, even reaching the very top of the lantern room itself, lashing against the glass. The entire, massive, seemingly invincible structure would tremble violently, vibrating from its very foundations, the thick glass rattling precariously in its frames, the very stone seeming to groan and moan under the immense, crushing pressure. The keeper would be utterly, completely alone, a solitary, vulnerable figure, feeling the full, terrifying, overwhelming force of the gale, the wind howling around the tower like a tormented, furious, hungry beast, the rain lashing against the windows with the force of thrown gravel or even small stones. It was a profound, terrifying, existential test of nerves, of the tower's very engineering, of its defiant strength, and, most certainly, of the keeper's own raw, unwavering resilience, their sheer will to endure. During these moments of pure, unadulterated chaos, the light had to be maintained at all costs, above all else. A failure, even a momentary flicker, even a subtle dimming, could mean utter, absolute disaster, could mean lives lost, ships shattered. Keepers would often recount harrowing, almost unbelievable stories of being trapped in the lantern room for extended periods, unable to descend the spiral stairs for hours, sometimes an entire day, sometimes even longer, due to the sheer, physical, overwhelming force of the wind and the relentless, battering waves that threatened to tear the tower apart. They'd stand their lonely, unyielding watch, sometimes for 24, 36, even a staggering 48 hours straight, battling profound, debilitating fatigue, raw, primal fear, and the unyielding, constant fury of the storm, all, simply all, to keep that one precious, solitary light burning, shining, reaching out into the unforgiving, consuming darkness. The light was not simply a signal, not merely a beacon. It was a lifeline, fragile yet immensely powerful, a slender thread between life and death. And the keeper was its steadfast, unwavering, utterly dedicated guardian. In the deafening roar and the blinding chaos of a tempest, the keeper's own calm, steady presence, their unwavering focus, their sheer determination was often the only thing standing between safety and oblivion for those unfortunate souls out at sea, caught in the storm's merciless, unyielding grip. A beacon of quiet resolve in the heart of chaos. We've touched upon it, we've circled around it, but the most profound, the most defining, the most pervasive aspect of a lighthouse keeper's existence was, arguably, the isolation. This wasn't simply a job one showed up for from 9 to 5. It was a profound, all-encompassing, life-altering commitment to solitude. For those keepers stationed on remote rock lighthouses, built on wave-battered, desolate outcrops, or on tiny, distant, uninhabited islands miles from any comforting shore, weeks, sometimes even entire months, could pass without seeing another human face beyond their immediate family if they were fortunate enough to have them present in such a desolate place. The silence in these places could be utterly, profoundly deafening, a palpable, almost physical presence that pressed in on you, broken only by the relentless elements, the constant rhythmic crash of waves against the base of the rock, the mournful howl of the wind whipping around the lantern room, or the steady, rhythmic ticking and gentle whirring of the lamp mechanism itself. a constant, almost hypnotic hum. Imagine the profound, almost spiritual quiet of a clear, cold winter night, a vast, star-filled tapestry of sky stretching endlessly above, and the endless, indifferent expanse of the ocean stretching out, deep and dark, below. It could be profoundly beautiful, certainly, breathtakingly so, but also deeply, profoundly unsettling to the human spirit, a challenge to one's very being. Keepers, to endure such a life, to survive such a pervasive solitude, had to be intensely self-sufficient, remarkably resilient, and possess a strong, rich, vibrant inner world, a universe within themselves. Those who couldn't truly cope with the pervasive, overwhelming solitude, those who craved constant human interaction, often didn't last long. The overwhelming, unyielding quiet would eventually break them, shatter their resolve. Some experienced profound, gnawing loneliness, a constant, aching longing for human connection, a hunger for another voice, while others remarkably found a deep, abiding, almost sacred peace in the quiet contemplation it offered, a unique chance to truly know themselves, to listen to the whispers of their own thoughts. Stories, some anecdotal, passed down through generations, some deeply tragic, recorded in sparse logs, abound of keepers who succumbed to what was often euphemistically called lighthouse fever, a form of profound mental distress or even outright madness brought on by extreme, unrelenting isolation, the ceaseless repetition of the light's flash, an almost hypnotic rhythm, and the relentless, unchanging rhythm of the sea, its constant murmur. They would talk to the gulls, to the waves, to the light itself, to invisible companions, their grip on reality slowly, imperceptibly loosening until it snapped. But for many others, the very isolation, the forced, quiet introspection, became an unexpected source of profound strength, a unique chance to connect with something deeper within themselves, to live a life stripped bare of all the urban distractions, all the social complexities, all the trivialities that define most human existence. They found clarity in the emptiness. Communication with the outside world was sparse, a tenuous, often broken thread. Mail was a precious luxury, anticipated for weeks with desperate longing, and any news from the distant mainland arrived weeks, sometimes even months, late, often feeling like dispatches from another lifetime, from a world that had moved on. Keepers lived in a bubble of their own making, a self-contained world, a tiny, isolated universe, a small, solitary kingdom, defined entirely by the immediate, pressing, unyielding needs of the light and the unpredictable, often violent, always changing moods of the sea. Their perspective on time, on life itself, on the very nature of human existence, would undoubtedly have been shaped in profound, indelible ways by this unique, isolated form of living. It was a profound, unspoken exchange. The keeper offered their solitude, their very being, their entire life, and in return, the light offered purpose, a clear, unwavering, undeniable reason to endure, to exist, to keep going. It was a life lived in a perpetual state of quiet contemplation, a silent dedication, a timeless vigil. For centuries, the keeper's dedicated vigil was not merely helpful, it was indispensable, the very linchpin of maritime safety, the absolute foundation of navigation. But as the 20th century slowly, inevitably dawned, a new era of relentless technological advancement began to emerge, slowly, steadily, inexorably, eroding the fundamental deep-seated need for a human presence in these lonely, towering sentinels. The The very efficiency and precision that lighthouses represented, the qualities that made them so valuable, would, ironically, ultimately lead to the keeper's quiet, almost unnoticed, yet profound disappearance. The first major transformative shift came with the brilliant, yet for the keepers, melancholy invention of the automatic lamp changer. No longer did a dedicated keeper need to be physically present, awake and alert through the darkest hours, to manually switch from one lamp to another if the primary lamp unexpectedly failed, a critical task. Then came the profound, game-changing advent of electricity. Oil lamps, with their delicate, demanding wicks, their constant thirst for refilling, and their messy soot, were slowly, systematically replaced by powerful, brilliant electric bulbs, requiring far, far less human intervention, far less physical labor, far less meticulous attention. The rhythmic, comforting flash of the light, once meticulously controlled by intricate clockwork and falling weights, a mechanical marvel, could now be effortlessly managed by simple, silent timers and robust, quiet electric motors. The subtle, almost magical hum of the winding weights, a constant companion, slowly faded away, replaced by the quiet, almost imperceptible whir of a small motor, a soulless efficiency. Foghorn technology also advanced with similar, quiet, relentless precision. Electric foghorns, now powerfully driven by distant generators or even ingeniously simple solar panels mounted on the tower, could be activated automatically by sophisticated, unblinking fog detectors. There was no longer any need for a keeper to painstakingly stoke a hot, roaring boiler in the dark, or to manually listen for the distant, familiar, mournful moan to determine precisely when to activate the horn to pierce the thick silence. The loud, resonant, yet deeply human cries of the past, filled with effort and dedication, were silently replaced by automated blasts, just as effective in their warning, but somehow indefinably, irrevocably less human, less poignant, less a product of direct, desperate effort. By the mid to late 20th century, the truly revolutionary advent of radar, highly accurate GPS systems, and global satellite navigation fundamentally, irrevocably changed maritime travel forever, transforming it from an art into a precise science. Sailors no longer relied solely on the visual aid of a lighthouse beam cutting through the darkness, a comforting, guiding light. They could now pinpoint their precise position with incredible, unwavering accuracy, even in the densest, most impenetrable fog or the fiercest, most disorienting storm. The guiding light of the lighthouse, while still useful, still a comfort, still a reassuring presence, was no longer the sole critical arbiter of safe passage. It became a backup, a reassurance, a tangible landmark on the coast, but no longer an absolute necessity for survival. The primary role was taken over by unseen signals. So, one by one, methodically, inevitably, lighthouses around the world were automated. Keepers, after years, often decades, of unwavering silent service, received their final, quiet orders, their very last shift now complete. The heavy keys were turned, the thick iron doors were locked, perhaps for the final time, and the silent, stoic towers continued their critical work. But now, without the warmth of a human touch, without the watchful, caring eye of a keeper, without the human element that had defined them for so long. For many of these dedicated keepers, it was a profoundly bittersweet farewell. A lifetime of unwavering dedication, of profound quiet solitude, of battling the elements, of silent communication with the sea, was suddenly, irrevocably rendered obsolete by the relentless, inevitable march of progress, by the cold, efficient hand of technology. The final keepers often left their isolated posts with a deep sense of quiet pride for their vital service, but also a profound melancholic sadness, an almost existential ache for a unique way of life that was rapidly, silently fading into the mists of history, a chapter closing forever. The glorious era of the human lighthouse keeper was coming to a quiet, almost imperceptible end, replaced by the relentless, silent efficiency of unfeeling machines, a profound shift in the human story. Today, most lighthouses around the globe stand automated, their powerful, sweeping beams still cutting across the waves, still piercing the darkness, often powered by clean, modern solar panels and maintained by occasional visiting technicians, not keepers. But the stories, the deep, resonant history, and the profound, enduring human connection to these stoic towers stubbornly, beautifully, undeniably endure. The lighthouse keeper, as a profession, as a distinct way of life, may be gone, a relic of a bygone era, a whisper from the past, but their silent, unwavering legacy continues to shine on, a silent testament to human dedication, to sheer perseverance, to unwavering vigilance, and to the eternal, ongoing struggle against the wild, untamed, unpredictable unknown of the sea. Many of these old, venerable lighthouses, no longer needed for their primary, critical function, have found new, unexpected lives, a beautiful second act. They have been lovingly transformed into fascinating museums where visitors can learn of their past, into cozy, unique bed and breakfasts offering unparalleled, breathtaking views of the ocean, or simply preserved as cherished historical sites, standing proudly as monuments to a tireless, dedicated past. Visitors can now slowly ascend the winding, well-worn spiral stairs, feeling the cool, ancient stone beneath their hands, worn smooth by generations of keepers, and gaze out from the lofty lantern room, allowing their imaginations to conjure the lonely, dedicated lives once lived within these very walls, the silent moments, the endless watches. The rhythmic flash of the light is still there, still sweeping its comforting arc, but now it's a gentle, almost wistful reminder of a bygone era, a timeless story quietly told in solid stone, in shimmering light, and in the persistent murmur of the sea. The lighthouse, once a purely functional, utilitarian aid to navigation, a simple tool, has, over time, transcended its original purpose. It has evolved, slowly, profoundly, beautifully, into a powerful, evocative symbol. It represents hope, a guiding star in the deepest darkness. It represents guidance, a steady, unwavering hand in the storm. It represents safety, a refuge from the chaos, a promise of land. And it represents steadfastness, an unwavering, persistent presence in the face of relentless, indifferent adversity. It stands for vigilance, for unwavering purpose, for the simple yet profoundly significant act of keeping a vital light burning relentlessly through the deepest, most impenetrable darkness. It is, in essence, a metaphor for humanity's eternal desire to bring order to chaos, to illuminate the path for others, to offer a beacon of certainty, however fleeting, in an uncertain, unpredictable world. It's a testament to human spirit against raw nature, And so, as the waves continue their ancient rhythmic roll against the timeless shores, and the distant comforting light of a lighthouse sweeps its slow hypnotic arc across the vast dark horizon, take a moment, a slow, deep breath to truly appreciate the silent, dedicated world it once housed, the tireless hands that polished the lenses until they gleamed like jewels, the quiet routines that defined each passing day, each waking hour, the profound, pervasive isolation that shaped their very being, their very outlook, and the unwavering dedication of the men and women who stood their lonely, constant watch through calm and storm. Their story isn't about grand pronouncements or celebrated heroic acts, not about loud victories, but about the quiet, profound dignity of a life lived, often unseen, often unacknowledged, for the benefit of others, for the safety of strangers. A life dedicated, unflinchingly, to keeping the sacred flame alive, ensuring that ships found their way home, that lives were saved, and perhaps, as that gentle thought slowly, softly, quietly settles into your mind, your own quiet, peaceful vigil might just begin as you drift gently, slowly, wonderfully into the soft, comforting, enveloping embrace of the night. Let the rhythm of the light guide you. Thank you for joining me tonight on this tranquil, unhurried journey into the silent world of lighthouses. I truly hope this quiet exploration has been a profoundly calming one, helping you to find a moment of peace, a respite from the world's clamour. If you found comfort in this quiet history, in these gentle whispers from the past, please consider leaving a gentle like and perhaps subscribing for more unhurried journeys into the quieter, often overlooked yet deeply significant corners of our shared past. Good night, and sleep very, very well, bathed in the gentle glow of history's quiet lights.